So I'm Mark Dinning, I'm Head of Conservation with Durham Wildlife Trust. Durham Wildlife Trust is one of 46 local wildlife trusts across the UK. We're a local charity, and our members and volunteers and other supporters are helping us restore nature in Durham, Gateshead, South Tyneside, Sunderland and Darlington. My role at the Trust is to oversee the development and delivery of all of our nature conservation activities. So this includes our work on our currently 53 nature reserves. Keeps on getting more every time I do a talk. And all of our amazing conservation projects, delivering nature's recovery and community action for nature from Tees to Tyne. I said I had a few health warnings, so here we go. Before I start, firstly, thank you to the people who have either provided me images for tonight or from those who I have borrowed. So thank you. This talk wouldn't be possible without the images I've used. I hope I've referenced people correctly, and if there's no reference, it's a Durham Wildlife Trust image. Many of the maps used in this talk are taken from the National Biodiversity Network Atlas. Hopefully I've accredited them suitably as well. The maps have been very helpful in helping to illustrate the subject of this talk. And finally, I'm a landscape ecologist by training and trade. I have a keen passion for plants above most other things, but I do not profess to be the expert botanist. I'm sure there are some of people in this room who may be more eminently qualified to take us through some of the subject matter tonight. But I hope, though, with spring round the corner, that my talk can inspire you to get out and discover the world of Magnesian Limestone Grasslands this spring and summer. A landscape that I've immersed myself in for over 20 years now. So, without further ado, on we move. So, calcareous grasslands. Wherever we are in the country, limestone or calcareous areas tend to be special for wildlife. This is no different for grasslands occurring on calcareous soils. So, lowland calcareous grassland is thought to include some of our most ancient grasslands. Woodland clearance, which started during the Mesolithic period, may have occurred first in areas where woodland was sparse, such as on thin, well-drained soils over limestone. Subsequent grazing prevented natural succession back to scrub and woodland, and together so subsequent grazing prevented natural succession back to scrub and woodland. Together with the thin soils, this discouraged more vigorous, bulky plants. Together with the warm, dry climate, indicated by our lovely cattle at the bottom there, and this isn't Mesolithic man's washing. So together with warm, dry climate, this created conditions suitable for the characteristic flora and fauna we appreciate today. Look, scary statistic there. In the UK, between 1990 and 2007, so over 17 years, there was 13,000 hectares of calcareous grassland lost. That's really quite worrying and really quite startling. We'll come to this later on. We'll look at some of the continuing threats that the Magnesian Limestone Grassland faces, but also some of the opportunities we can utilise as well. Richly diverse grassland, 1 metre square, can support up to 40 species of flowering plant. The diversity arises through a combination of mineral, nutrient and drought stress, and grazing and cutting management, which prevents the domination of the grassland by a few rank species. I'm just going to take a quick drink. So, can we all see this map okay? Good. And what we're looking at on this map is the yellow mark down the middle, the yellow shading down the middle, running roughly from Newcastle down to Nottingham. So this is the outcrop of magnesium limestone running from South Tyneside. There's actually a little bit can be seen in North Tyneside if you go to look at the cliffs below Tynemouth Castle, and it runs all the way down to Nottinghamshire. Anyone who has driven from Durham to Doncaster on the A1 will recognise this rock from the road verges at the start and the end of your journey. So, let me take you back in time. 260 million years ago, the landmass that today's Britain was part of sat near the equator. It was part of a desert similar to the Sahara today, and over the next 10 million years, it would be inundated time and time again by the open ocean. This ocean forming an inland sea known as the Zecdine Sea. This sea, through its life, and during periods of drying, would lay down the sea creatures and the chemicals that would form this special calcareous rock. Here we see a period where a barrier reef was formed. Viewed today as outcrops like the Tunstall Hills around Sunderland. Moving from the bottom image up in this slide, we see how the periods of global warming and then mini ice ages led to the stages in the rock formation. First, the desert sands were inundated. They're quarried today at places like Raisby. We'll come to that later. Then mudstone was laid to cover these, and then what followed was a series of limestones being created. Each formation now named by the places where it is most visible. Working west to east on this slide, we see the Roca Dolomite formation. We see the Raisby formation, and then we see the formation of the Ford formation until we move across to the coast where we see the Roca and the Seam formation. The images in the top right hand side of this slide, one is taken from Trowel Point at South Shields, which is a really good location to go and have a look at the different formations of the magnesium limestone. The other one I wouldn't go and recommend you go and visit, not without getting in touch with the quarry company first. But that's Raisby Quarry, and again that's a really good example of the different formations. You can actually see those sands we talked about there, right in the bottom of the image. So, Magnesian Limestone Grassland. So, grasslands on this substrate are nationally scarce and much fragmented due to agricultural land improvements and quarrying activities. There's only an estimated 272 hectares of magnesian limestone grassland in this country, or what remains in Britain. Of this 272 hectares, there's 181 hectares of that occurs in Durham and Tyne and Wear. So really Durham, Tyne and Wear really holds a really large resource of this grassland. We're going to talk about CG8 grassland a fair bit. Now, this is where we maybe get a little bit scientific-y and a little bit techie, and it takes me back to my university days as well. But basically, amongst the mag lime is a very rare grassland community, and we're going to take a closer look at that in a bit. But just briefly about that, so this community is classified as CG8 grassland in the National Vegetation Classification. Anyone unfamiliar with the National Vegetation Classification, or the NVC, basically this is a UK vegetation classification system that classifies a plant community by the abundance and frequency of plants occurring in that community. CG8 grassland is confined to the Magnesian Limestone of County Durham. It's not found in any other place. Two of our region's national nature reserves are designated because of the significant amount of CG8 grassland they contain, and a further two are designated because of the habitats that have evolved on this special limestone. One of them being the Durham coast, which we'll come to later as well. So, sheltered by the Pennine Range, Durham is one of the drier counties in England. And when a windy county, spring arrives later than expected. Mean temperature is 8.3 degrees C. I bet that's very exact, isn't it? Low annual temperature is a result of its northerly latitude and also the coolness of the North Sea. So, the MVC sets out to describe a number of plant communities, those found in woodlands, wetlands, grasslands and heath. One of the calcareous grassland, it describes these and sets them crudely into this British phytogeography. You can see the Sesleria communities, so these are the Sesleria caerulea communities, the CG9 and the CG8. They sit kind of at that midpoint. So they're sitting lying over kind of this north-south split. This is really important for what we're going to talk about next, and don't worry, there's lots of lovely pictures coming up in the following slides. Because of the position and the geology, Magline grasslands, especially CG8 community, has a mix of plants that contains both northern species at the south of their range and southern species at the north of their range. So we actually find plants occurring together that we don't find occurring together elsewhere. So, Sesleria caerulea and Scabious columbinaria grasslands. So, the table at the top of the slide shows the most constant species in the CG8 community. The two main ones here that the community is named after is the blue moorgrass, the Sesleria, and the Scabious columbinaria, small scabious. There's a number of other species kind of listed in the top of the community constants there. So, but those are the most frequently and abundant occurring plants in this community. To start on blue moorgrass, this might not work for the video, but can I have a show of hands of people who have visited the Magnesian Limestone and seen blue moorgrass in flower? Okay, fantastic. So not many. So when this presentation ends, you have about 6 weeks before you have to get your boots on, jump in some kind of vehicle and get to your nearest Magnesian Limestone Grassland site and see this grass in flower. It is absolutely stunning. The colours you will see at the start of May, absolutely cracking. So, blue moorgrass, it's a densely tufted perennial grass. It forms dense tufts and is drought tolerant. Stems grown to no more than about 45 centimetres in length, but often shorter than this depending on the substrate. The inflorescence is shiny blue-grey when fresh with conspicuous purple anthers, but it's straw-coloured when much older. Its drought tolerance is why it's so well suited for life on the porous limestone. It's a inflorescence. It's quite obviously where it gets its English name from. I've mentioned there's no site quite like it to go and see, so I really encourage you to do this. Some maps along the bottom there, and you can really see its limited distribution in the UK. So in Lowland County Durham, you can see actually it doesn't occur in many, it's not recorded in many locations. Where it is recorded, that's where we find the CG8 grassland. The majority of the rest of the dots on that map at the left-hand side of the slide pretty much form a lot of the CG9 grassland, which is a blue moor grass community, but which is which is in the uplands. Confined to calcareous grasslands mainly in England and Wales, small scabious is an example of a southern species meeting the northern species blue moor grass. In lowland Durham, you can see it's pretty much confined again to the mag line. So, I've touched upon earlier about how limestone grasslands are quite often our most ancient grasslands. I'm going to talk you through here a couple of sites where we still have what's referred to as these primary grasslands, and in this case primary CG8 grassland. The primary because actually it has always been grassland since it colonised as grassland after the last ice age. It has always been grassland. It has been nothing other than this CG8 grassland, and it's been maintained well, very much similar to its current state for a very long time. The two sites we're going to look at here are Town Bank and Cassock Vale. Town Bank is smaller in comparison to Cassock Vale. I'm using Town Bank here as an example of some unique plant communities present at both. Cassock Vale is a National Nature Reserve, and Town Bank is a SSSI. Cassock, managed magnificently by Natural England, and Town Bank owned and managed by Durham Wildlife Trust. You'll notice on the pictures here, so really fantastic geological formation. So what this is basically, Town Bank was formed as a subglacial meltwater channel. And on the banks, basically, what we don't find this in the bottom of the valley, but on the valley banks, we find the primary CG8 grassland. And here it is truly ancient. Present is a rich CG8 community, the bank supporting numerous herbs, grasses, sedges, and associated invertebrate interest. It's the banks of one of the slope that are really quite intriguing, though. So then, Primula farinosa, or bird's eye primrose. So this flower is viewed as an upland species, it being most widely associated with the limestone country of the North Pennines and Lake District. Slightly beguiling because it can be found in a host of conditions, mainly in calcareous flushes, where lime-rich water runs or seeps through peat, but quite often alongside butterwort. Reginald Farrer, the early 20th century explorer and plant collector, had seen alpine species all over the world, but rated this little primula above all the rest. So it's interesting to find this species in lowland Durham. Mostly recognised at Town Bank and Cassock Vale. at town colour, it grows on a north-facing limestone bank. This bank remaining damper because of its orientation and receiving seepage from the ground around and above it. Here it flowers in May to June. Growing alongside it is common butterwort, more common in the British Isles than birdseye primrose that we've just examined. It inhabits a range of wet habitats, from acid bogs, wet heaths and fens to lime-rich flushes. These habitats do not provide it with enough nutrients, so it's had to evolve a carnivorous way of life. In Durham, mainly confined to a few calcareous flushes on the Mag Lime. It produces around 2 or 3 upright flower stalks which bear small, deep purple flowers, flowering May to July. The picture here on the right-hand side, I've entitled that Timing, because for the amount of years I've been going and looking at it, there's only been once when I've been managed to time it to have both primula and the common butterwort in flower at the same time. So I was very pleased with that photo. Moving on to Thrislington Plantation. So managed brilliantly by Natural England, Thrislington Plantation holds the largest example of CJ grassland in Britain, as well as other habitats and a range of uncommon species. And this interest sees that it's recognised in its declaration as a national nature reserve. The eastern portion of the site, this is where we needed that pointer, Gordon, isn't it? No, I've got you. Let's see. Here we go. So the eastern portion of the site. So this portion here. So that supports an intact primary surface, generally dominated by blue moor grass and areas of sheep's fescue as well. The western portion of the site holds primary turf which was translocated between 1982 and 1990. And this translocation was as a result of the extension of the adjacent quarry. The pattern of the original grassland has been lost during the translocation, although this area still remains herb rich with many of the aforementioned species. We'll come to this in a little bit, but characteristic differences are areas of grassland dominated by upright brome, which is more a southern species, and others which are dominated by glaucous sedge and quake and grass. A quick little mention, we're talking a lot about plants tonight, but let's not forget glowworm, which can be seen the right time of year at Trindon. So, talking about some of the rarities that we find at Trindon, we have perennial flax. Again, you can see on the slide more of a southern species. Those last two that we were kind of talking about at Town Colour Bank, recognised more as northern species, but this is a southern species. Perennial flax is a scarce native of chalk and limestone grassland, having a level of drought resilience. The kind of flax, this plant, well, you might recognise flax more commonly, so not perennial flax, but flax, which is its cultivar cousin, which has been bred for its fibre and oil, is similar but shouldn't be confused with perennial flax. The cultivar has become a very popular agricultural plant and garden escapee. And then another rarity is Mountain Everlasting that we find at Trindon as well. Again, this chiefly grows on calcium-rich rocks in upland Britain. So again, we can kind of see a real nice mix of southern and northern species occurring together there. I mentioned Bromus erectus. Bromopsis erectus. So moving from northern species to southern species, we have upright brome. This is of interest at Thrislington. Basically, there's been ongoing study as a result of the translocation of the grasslands. We've also been studying upright brome as well at the nearby DWT Nature Reserve, Raisby Hill grassland. So over time, the translocated areas at Thrislington have kind of evolved. There's this kind of patchwork of CG2, CG6 and CG3 communities, which are all quite southern kind of grassland communities. The monitoring has identified that upright brome is increasing in abundance. This may be down to a number of factors, but it's considered that climate might be playing a role in this. So actually in Durham, we're now starting to see more of a southern climate have effect, but we're also considering how grazing and other management activities are affecting the abundance of this species. It's really important how we understand the abundance of this species, because it can outcompete a number of those other grasses and herbs that we've just been talking about. Just talking about climate very quickly, I'm just touching on purple moorgrass here. Purple moorgrass is another grass we're starting to see increase in abundance on CG8 sites. Typically a heathland plant. This grass was once mainly absent from many of the sites we've talked about so far, and it's now becoming ever present and a concern for site managers and mag-lime sites. Forming dense turfs, it's out competing many of the herbs and grasses we find in CG8 communities. Its recent success, we can probably attribute this perhaps to warmer, wetter winters and springs. Moving across the road from Thrislington, we're moving to Bishop Midland Quarry, which is a secondary CG8 grassland. Bishop Midland Quarry, managed by Durham Wildlife Trust. This is triple SI. It's described in its triple SI citation and in recent assessments by Natural England as one of the most important quarry triple SIs in the country. A former quarry working stopped here in the mid-1930s. A small area was further worked in the 1960s. All of CG8 grassland you see there today has colonised in from the quarry rim. It is an orchid spotter's treasure trove. To name a few, there is early purple orchid, twayblade, bee orchid, common spotted orchid, northern marsh orchid, pyramidal orchid, and both common fragrant and marsh fragrant orchid are recorded here. The one that everyone comes to visit, and they travel from not just across the country, but from across the globe to come and see this orchid. It's Epipactis atrorubens, or dark red helleborine. More about this in a second. There's actually lots to discover here. Moonwort is one example of a plant you need to get on your hands and knees for. It's not just plants that the quarry is important for, though. It also has rich invertebrate assemblage, the northern brown Argus butterfly being one species thriving here as a result of the lime-loving common rock rose that we find on the site here. I'll mention fragmentation later on, but fragmentation of these mag-lime sites has a huge impact on the wildlife we find there. It reduces the likelihood of recruitment from outside of reserves like Bishop Midland, but it also means that populations like northern brown Argus are becoming isolated. they're becoming more interbred, and actually that is can result in a decline in those populations as well. We also have the brown argus, a southern species which has moved north, which is now interbreeding with northern brown argus at Bishop Midland Quarry. So we may actually start to see the loss of northern brown argus in time from the site, which is very sad to think of. Epipactis atrorubans, so dark red hellebore, a very scarce, rare orchid, found in Durham, Thrisington, Bishop Midland Quarry, and Raisby Hill Grassland. Its strongholds in the northern limestones, though small populations are found in the south, most notably in Derbyshire. A big mention goes to David Sowerbutt, who some of you may know. He and his intrepid volunteers have been monitoring dark red hellebore at Bishop Midland Quarry for over 30 years now. So they've been going back on or around the 24th of July every year for 30 years and counting dark red hellebore at Bishop Midland Quarry. We've had a theory that for a long time that actually kind of warm, wet springs have been really good for the germination of this orchid. That's kind of supported by some of the data in the graph on the left of this slide. The graph on the right, that is data taken from monitoring that we started to undertake at Raisby Hill Grassland, which is another DWT nature reserve, just a couple of miles north of Bishop Midland Quarry. We wanted to basically be able to compare the data sets to basically see if the populations reacted the same to weather conditions at both sites. We've been undertaking those surveys there from 2010. I've included 6 years of data here, but what I wanted to flag up here is that on the continent, so in Europe, dark red hellebore is more associated as kind of like more of a woodland orchid. And actually at Raisby, where we find the highest counts in our monitoring activity, is actually down around the scrubby woodland edges. We get some absolutely fantastic specimens like this one here and these two here in these photos. So section 5 in our monitoring area, that's the kind of most scrubby area, and there's obviously some scrubby woodland mycorrhizal relationship going on there with the dark red hellebore there. Highest count at Bishop Midland Quarry, almost 2,500 dark red hellebore spikes in a single year. So that is on the 24th of July, going in, all those volunteers and David counting 2,500 spikes. And that is just the flowering spikes. That does not include the ones that the rabbits have nibbled off. So really a sight to be seen. Just a quick mention, monitoring so important. Anyone here who is interested in getting involved with monitoring and survey with Durham Wildlife Trust, please do get in touch with me or anyone else at the Trust. We would love to have you involved. These are some of the special things we can find. So this is well done, Tim Davis, Southern Reserves Officer with Durham Wildlife Trust. This is last year. He found this, the marsh hellebore, growing on the spoil bank at Raisby Hill Grassland when he was doing the orchid count with volunteers. Really keen eye and well done him. one of only 2 records now in Vice County 66. Honourable mention for a few other things before we move towards the coast. We've focused mainly on CG8 grassland community so far, but we should not overlook the more common calcareous grasslands that can be found developing on old mineral workings and along old mineral lines or on horse pasture throughout the east of Durham. We've got a few species on the slide here, starting in the top left. We have autumn gentian. We've got yellowwort. We've got wild thyme and fairy flax. Kind of, I've flagged those because actually those are ones that we start to find colonising along with glaucous sedge on some of the bare substrates. Quickly, and then such as you know, kind of new quarry spoil and things like that. And then I mentioned of some of the other plants here that you might find growing in some of the other kind of grasslands on the Mag line. So things like the field scabious, the great knapweed, quaking grass, kidney vetch, rest harrow, and carline thistle as well. So lots to discover. So what we're doing now, we are moving to the coast, where actually blue moorgrass that we've talked a lot about so far, it's absent from really the grassland communities we find on the Durham coast. So we're talking now about some of those more southern communities. The CG6, it's present throughout, but also has CG3, CG4, CG2, along with a number of transitional grassland communities providing diverse and often complicated grassland. The substrate is complex too. Magnesian limestone is overlain here by boulder clay. Where the magnesian limestone is exposed, we see plants like common rock rose, salad burnet, birdsfoot trefoil, small scabious, glaucous sedge, purple milk vetch, a plant with a very eastern distribution in the UK, and bloody cranesbill. The bloody cranesbill, this comes with the maritime influence of the coast, and we also see things like the sea thrift and sea plantain, in fact, as well. In fact, I just wanted to point to one record, which I came across undertaking a survey about 7 years ago of a local wildlife site quite close to Bishop Middleham Quarry. This site is under private ownership and was a small former quarry, and I'm always fascinated with how plants ended up where they are. So sea plantain, I found that in this quarry very much inland away from the coast. I love that. I love that about plants and how come what's come to where. So on the Durham coast, we refer to the grasslands on the Durham coast, a collective term as paramaritime Magnesian limestone grasslands. Let's try saying that 10 times quickly. It's found on the coast from South Tyneside down to Crimden. Its largest continuous expanse being from Seaham, being from Seaham down to Crimden. Again, here it's an area where south meets north. So where the limestone's overlain by boulder clay, we get various flush communities. Many are dominated by hemp agrimony, but in a special flue we get some truly special plants. The mouth of Blue House Gill, which is a small natural valley east of Blackhall Colliery, is the main area of interest for these. Of note, here is saltwort, really recognised as a southern species. Blackhall Rocks having one of the most northerly records in England, and this exists alongside the more upland recognised species that we visited already tonight, birds like primrose and butterwort. We also get roundleaf wintergreen here in these flushes. It's a scattered rare evergreen perennial in Britain. Its main population is in Norfolk Broads, West Coast and Scottish Highlands. It's extremely rare in the northeast of England. Again, it prefers calcareous soils. Grassa panassus is now more confined to the damp pastures, moors and marshes of northern Britain and the Norfolk Fens. Again, we can see it's a rarity in the lowland northeast England. Really quite special having all these species occurring together. I'm just gonna, okay. Moving just slightly inland off the coastal cliffs, there's also a host of other fantastic calcareous grasslands on the Durham coast. All there, all free for you to go and visit and enjoy to your heart's content. Looked after not just by Durham Wildlife Trust, but really great work done by National Trust, South Tyneside Council, Sunderland Council, Durham County Council. Some really fantastic grasslands to see all the way down the coast. If I was to recommend one, it would be one that ourselves and the National Trust manage, which is the meadow at Hawthorne Dean. When we mentioned earlier, 40 species to the square metre, 40 different species to the square metre. That is one of the places where that is true. Go and find a square metre there. Find 40 different species square metre. Absolutely amazing grassland. So look, it's not all hunky-dory, is it? We mentioned right at the start that between 1990 and 2007, 13,000 hectares across the UK of calcareous grassland was lost. How did this happen? Look, it's the same in Durham as it is elsewhere. It's the same on the magnesium limestone as it is elsewhere. Succession, so look, no active management taking place allows scrub to invade and grasslands are lost. Vegetation change, we've looked at tonight how upright brome, purple moorgrass, and actually I've not mentioned this, but how bracken abundance is increasing, and that is linked to other factors as well. But where those are increasing, they're out competing all these fantastic plants that we've looked at. Management practice, so look, inappropriate levels of grazing or the type of livestock can have impacts. The fact that now we have less traditional breeds that are capable to go and graze these sites and graze these sites effectively. What livestock can we utilise? Is it resource intensive to undertake mowing on these sites? Actually, mowing might be one way. We can control upright brome better. We also have things like atmospheric deposition. So studies show nitrogen increases bracken productivity. For the UK calcareous grasslands, the critical nitrogen load is 14 to 25 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per year. Previous estimates for some of the mag-lime sites are within this range. So that's worrying as well. Climate, we've talked about this already. The bright brome, purple moorgrass and bracken may be a direct response to climate change, a rise in the average temperatures and perhaps altered rain patterns. This either affects the growth directly or through changes in soil nutrient cycling. Then fragmentation, the isolation of sites and the poor recruitment of species into them. And then the human impact we have, so disturbance and fire, development and agricultural intensification as well. I mentioned some of the horse pastures in Durham earlier on, and actually I've seen some really great grasslands on the Magnesian Limestone where it's been the same owner for decades, and they've been great because they've owned the same amount of horses or ponies, turned them out at the same time, and actually those grasslands have survived as a result. What happens when that owner changes? And one of the things. So look, to finish on, it's not all doom and gloom. There's lots of opportunities. So, where's the point gone? There we go. So, this here is Roseby Quarry, where I mentioned those mentioned those ancient sands earlier on. I've highlighted in yellow the local wildlife sites and triple SIs and national nature reserves in the local area. The area highlighted in red, both on the aerial shot, both on the satellite image and on the drone image, so the area highlighted in red is an area that has been restored in the last 15 years. And there's actually really big opportunity here working with the quarry companies. So as part of their restoration plan to start to restore much larger areas of Magnesian limestone grassland. The spoil bank at Roseby Hill Grassland, just there, that is where we do one of the dark red helleborine counts. In the 1980s, that was a big pile of quarry spoil which got pushed down a hill. I dread to think of what species were lost under that pile of quarry spoil, but actually what is now growing on top of it really gives us really good hope for the future. We've seen how the dark red helleborines thrived on there, but blue moorgrass is starting to come back on there. Common rock rose as well is starting to come back across there as well, which is supporting what is a small population, which has been a small population of northern brown Argus butterfly in a small quarry at the southern end of the site. But you can see how beautifully this all links in with the extension of Roseby Hill Grassland and onto the old mineral workings in mineral lines through the area. So where we are talking now, looking forward at local nature recovery strategies, biodiversity net gain, all of this, we're looking at some really big opportunities on the Magnesian limestone to actually start to recover what's been lost and let's put back that 13,000 hectares that's been lost. This is a huge opportunity now to really allow these habitats that we've discussed tonight and these special plants a chance to actually have a future on the Mag line. I'm going to mention this just in case someone has got a big bag of money in the back of their wardrobe. I kid you not, I took a call 3 hours ago from someone with a piece of land to sell very close to one of these nature reserves on this map, and the acquisition of that piece of land will be vitally important for the conservation of two rare alpine species we've talked about tonight. Please come and see me if you've got that big bag of money, because I would love to ring that person back tomorrow and say we would love to buy that land so we can further protect these fantastic habitats. One last slide. if you brought a pen and paper, or I can email this out. These are some recommended sites to go and visit this spring and this summer. Something to see all the way through the spring and summer. Blue moor grass comes into flower April, May. Those autumn gentians finish flowering as late as October. There we go, something to see all the way through. Please enjoy your journey into the Mag Line. Thank you very much.